This one might be rather a good sign for the 4K disc format because it's a rather obscure film from 1978, but a highly regarded film perhaps from 1978. This is Walter Hill's The Driver, starring Ryan O'Neal, Isabella Gianni and Bruce Dern. I think it's a good film, and this 4K is pretty good too. The Driver runs for just over an hour and a half, has an aspect ratio of approximately 1:85:1 and comes with the original mono sound. There aren't many extras on this disc, but what there are pretty good. It's mainly a pair of interviews with director Walter Hill, and they are quite interesting, worth watching I think. There's also the original theatrical trailer and a load of television adverts that were created at the time the film was originally on release. There's also an alternate opening, and I suspect, or I think, that must come from the original director's cut of the film, which I believe ran for 2 hours 10, 2 hours and 11 minutes, and this must be the original opening from that, because it introduces all the characters we're about to see in the film before the action starts, so it does fit in quite well. And what's nice about the alternate opening on this is it is exactly as they found it, so almost off the cutting room floor, and there's plenty of damage on here, and it does give you the opportunity to see what a bit of film can look like if it hasn't been cared for, like the negative clearly has, or possibly the restoration that has gone into that original camera negative of The Driver, because it does look really clean throughout, if a little coarse grained at times, but we'll come on to that one. Now, on the cover of The Driver you will notice a quote from a chap called Edgar Wright, "A diamond-tight minimalist masterclass." So it's interesting that Edgar Wright himself would direct a film that was strikingly similar later on, called Baby Driver. This one is hugely popular with youngsters, I think because they like the soundtrack, but I think The Driver is the better of the two films. Other opinions are available. But there's another film that I think is remarkably similar, the Ryan Gosling starring Drive, issued by Second Sight, another one about a getaway driver. So it looks like Walter Hill really did make an influence on filmmakers years later. And so the story of The Driver features a best-in-the-business getaway driver and a determined policeman who sets out to catch him. There is very little character development in this. We don't even get character names. They're just known as the driver, the detective, that sort of thing. And we know all we need to know about them. There's no backstory or anything like that. And the locations in this, there's some great locations in Los Angeles, some great chase locations, which I was identifying because they did seem to tear along various streets that look just the same to me as those in the Terminator, and in particular that famous tunnel. I was almost at times looking out for a disco called Tech Noir, but of course that was a fabrication for the James Cameron film. I thought it was a good transfer, but some may feel that when the opening titles, when it first starts, the opening titles are coming on against the imagery in the background, and because that's an optical, they've multiplexed two bits of film together, the imagery and the titles, and photographed by another camera, so therefore two or more elements that produce increased film grain. But I thought overall this was a good transfer. The daylight sequences, for the most part, they can be a bit variable, but they're quite fine-grained. But when you get to the darker sequences, you may find that that really is a little too coarse for some tastes, but I rather like the way it looks. But there are some sequences in the hotel rooms, one in particular I came across where I thought, is that really 4K? But presumably that was how it looked on the day of shooting, and filmmaking is a bit of a battle at times. You can't just keep going back and reshooting something if you're not happy with it. You've got to keep moving forward, stick to the schedule and stick to the budget, so we always have to accept there may be a few compromises here and there. And in this case, I think there was one scene where I spotted a missing frame or two. I don't think many other people will notice it, but if it's there, it's just something to bear in mind. There might have been a bit of damage on the negative and it couldn't be resuscitated on this occasion. I felt that the mono sound suited this one particularly well. After a few minutes of watching the action, I didn't really give it any thought to the fact that it wasn't a surround sound film, but I know some out there will be disappointed that it hasn't been reworked into Dolby Atmos, and if they had to put the investment into doing that, I don't know how many man hours that would have taken, how much it would have cost, but actually this film might have suited that even better because there really is some terrific action on the screen. It's not all car chases all the way through. One pretty good one at the opening, as you would expect. There's a really good one at the end, and there's a minor one in the middle where Ryan O'Neill, the driver, shows what he can do to a prospective new set of villains who intend to rob a bank, and he's driving a Mercedes around in an underground car park, which does look similar to the underground car park in the Terminator. So the action is terrific. The sound, I thought, suited it really well. Maybe would have been better with a modern Dolby or DTS setup, but overall I found this film came out, took me in. I knew all there was to know about everyone involved, and I really wanted the driver to succeed. But some of the stunts in this were incredible. It's hard to believe that they were actually allowed, and the one at the climax where the car really does get smashed up rather badly, it can't have gone off exactly as was expected, because I looked at it and I was quite shocked and amazed really that there were no reports of anyone being killed in the making of this film. So I think we really have got a classic here from 1978. What a great year for movies that was, and this is probably another one of them, and what a treat to be able to watch it in your home cinema or on your large screen television in this sort of quality today. Once again, it's the HDR, the high dynamic range, that makes a difference between the 4K and the Blu-ray. The richer colour, the deeper contrast, the better density. In isolation, the Blu-ray would probably be fine. I thought it looked a little lacklustre anyway, but after looking at the 4K, I think Blu-rays do tend to look like that. But if you were to just buy a Blu-ray and put it on, you'd probably think it was pretty good. But I felt that the 4K was markedly, perceptibly superior. Once more to the Blu-ray, and HDR was the reason. Now, I can't recall much in the way of bad language in this. Yes, there's a bit of violence, one nasty bit where gun barrel goes into one of the actresses' mouths, which is fairly nasty to look at. But apart from that, I don't think there's really anything to be concerned about. There's nothing in the way of sex, doesn't need it. There's very little dialogue actually, it's all very quietly played, and is perhaps an example into how to make an action movie. So could be one for you. I really like it. I'm glad I bought it. I'm almost glad that Silent Running wasn't in stock when I went into a branch of HMV, because that was primarily what I went in for. But I've got an excuse to go back, haven't I? I think there's one other thing to say about this release, is that it comes with a poster. It's the new artwork poster, and in fact we had it on the wall outside here on the day that we were going to watch the film in the evening. Now, I've mentioned HMV, and we've still got some videos coming in, and 4K Michelin Star Movies has shot the Watford branch for us, the exterior anyway, which I thought I'd show here before I do another HMV update sometime in the future. So thank you for that. Looks like another really nice store in an indoor shopping centre. So I think the next video is quite likely to be a 4K review of Rollerball, which I got in from Germany recently. It's available in the USA. I don't think it's been released at all in the UK yet, but I think it's a popular film. I've loved it since the first time I saw it, which, as I mentioned in my last video, was on a 2x400 foot Super 8 cut down from Duran Films. There is also a 2x400 foot from Marketing Film in Germany, and so it's interesting that it was released in Germany on Super 8 all those years ago, and it's now also been released first in Germany on 4K. Something tells me it's a very popular film in Germany. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to carry on creating content like this. Until the next video, bye bye for now.